Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Oh, mic's not working.
Yeah, we can hear
Hello,
you.
hello, test, test.
I can hear you.
All right. Sorry, my headphones turn off whenever there's no audio for a while. Welcome back, everybody, to day 14 of Foundations of Programming. We are close to the end of the third week. How is everybody feeling so far?
Good.
Yeah? How do you guys feel about the material so far? Do you feel like you've learned a lot? Do you feel like maybe you did not learn as much as you expected? What do you guys think?
I think for me, like definitely learned and piece by piece. And then it was just the putting it all together and like the lemonade stand was a bit challenging. But it's like a good challenge because it's making sense. It's just the actual steps are a bit confusing. But definitely learned. I think it's a good intro before actually going to the cohort and seeing all this stuff for the first time.
Yeah, and you're gonna see it again, but more in depth for sure. How do you
I
feel,
actually
Jason?
I actually found the video of Lemonade Stand that you did in the Yankee Platoon, and that was a little less messy, so it's a little easier to follow.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I try to do them. They're not always the same. Like I told you, I'm not. I could have the answer pulled up, the answer key, and then kind of just go through it. But it's easier for me to not do that and then encounter issues. And although they might be a little bit more time consuming, uh, we can also see how to debug these issues. And it's going to be the same type of issues that you're going to encounter once you start going through the immersive program yourself.
Yeah, I guess
Tim,
I was I guess I just had one thought. I'm not sure if it's just for the sake of time, but I thought it was better to like, just do like pieces at a time and constantly be testing your code. Because I guess one thing was it's kind of like you typed a whole bunch of stuff out and then we'd run the unit test at the end and then it's harder to go back and figure out like, where the mess up was. But I don't know if that was just for sake of time or
no, you're absolutely right. I think that would have been better. I don't know why I went a different route this time. I should have done that to avoid the those bugs at the end. But no, you're absolutely right. And it's and you want to do that, right? When writing any piece of code, you want to ensure that you're testing out every method and function you're doing as you progress, because it makes it significantly more harder to try to debug something when you have like six, five different functions at the end of it. You're like, okay, I don't know which one's messing up. So no, you're absolutely right. We should have done that. I apologize for not doing that, and I will take that into consideration for the future.
no, I mean it's okay because it was still interesting to see like I mean running unit tests and continuing to go through the code and see where he messed up but still keep a straight face and just keep on going and then I was like bam, it's like 3 hour window like just in time. It was like it all came together.
Yeah, no, for sure. Tim, how you feeling, Tim?
Um, I'm feeling, can you hear me?
Yes, Ken.
I feel like I've learned a lot about Python. Not as much about JavaScript, but that's fine. And I have rewritten the lemonade stand from nothing 4 times now.
Really?
Just because one piece keeps throwing me, and I think I finally figured out what I'm doing, and it worked completely today. I passed all the tests, so I was pretty happy.
What part do you think was giving you the most issues or confusion?
It's when I am using a get method, often I'll forget to open close parentheses, and then it will still work. I can still pull the 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 data, but it will be type method, and so I can't use it to iterate through a dictionary.
Height method.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I mean, you're technically not really iterating through the dictionary if you use the get method for the dictionary.
So that's not what I mean. I'm talking like if I get a string in order to do a, you know, if string is in dictionary.keys, the string, when I use that get method, if I don't open close parentheses, the formula, uh, I can still query the data that way, but when you do that, it's a type method. It's not a type string. So you can't use it to check for values in the keys because it's wrong.
Yeah, because the get method will return to you the value. Is that what you're referring to?
if you don't pull the get method at the end of the get method, you have the empty parentheses. If you
Uh-huh.
leave that off and you just type the method, it will return instead of the actual string, it will return a method.
Hmm.
And
That's
you cannot,
interesting.
and a method doesn't have inherent properties of anything.
Like, are you talking about the getter method, not the get method for accessing a dictionary?
Yeah, a getter method. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I see. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I see. I'll look into it to see exactly in what context. I'm having a little difficult trying to um imagine it, but let's go ahead and start because we have a lot to do today. We have a whole lesson that I would like to get through completely through today and do some setup for tomorrow's lesson so we don't waste that time tomorrow. Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. We should all be looking at the PowerPoint. We are about to start lesson 10, which is the read and write files. We are still working with object-oriented programming. It's still using classes. But now we're going to talk about how we can access other types of files and bring them into our classes and parse through different types of documentation. So files. Uh, I'm sure up to this point you guys already know that there are different types of files. We've handled, Python files, JavaScript files. You have your more common ones that you've used before, like your text files, which technically you can use like Notepad, right? It's just raw text. You've probably seen MP3 files, which tend to have like music or some type of audio. You've more than likely seen PDF files. If you've ever had a recording, movie files, so on and so forth. And when it comes to files, there's two types of files, right? Text files that are human readable, right? That's your Python files, your JavaScript files. They use some type of language that you can read. That's your PDFs, documents, text, and then you have binary files. And usually these are not human readable. Think about your JPEG files, right? Your JPEG files, if you had an image, you wouldn't be able to actually read the the wording if you were to open up the raw text for this file. Uh, when I was going through the immersive program, we had our group project. Uh, Traditionally, you want to ensure that your group project is everything that was covered throughout the entire cohort. Um, One of the other students really wanted to adventure out and give it a try in game development, right? He brought the idea to instructors that he would like to set a team to create a game. Even though everybody else is going to be working on a full stack application, he wanted to try something a little bit different. And when it comes to these projects, you have to pitch it to the instructors, right? They're going to tell you the criteria required. You have to meet this criteria, and the instructor will be the approval person for whether you're going to move forward with this project or not. I don't know how he convinced the instructor, but uh, they blessed off on us moving forward with creating a game for our final project. The project consisted of five of us, and it was conducted in a game engine known as Godot. For those of you that do not know games or aren't familiar with games and stuff, game engines are kind of the equivalent of like frameworks or something very similar to that assist you in writing these games or creating these games. Think of kind of like I wouldn't say it's close to React or Django. I would say it's closer to something like VS Code. It's actually more of an application that simplifies the creation of your game development. Where normally you would, you know, in older times you would hard code every single line of the process of the game. Game engines like VS Code that offer extensions and some built-in methods and stuff and all these cool little tools sort of these game engines. And if you're familiar with games, you've probably heard of stuff like Unreal Engine. You've heard of Unity. And there's a open source uh, game engine called Godot that was becoming very popular at the time and still is. Well, we decided to use this to kind of dabble in game development. And when it comes to creating games, we had to use sprites, right? And sprites is just a fancy word for a picture file, right? So for stuff like our main character, our enemies, the terrain, any kind of stuff like pots, tables, whatever kind of decorations you had on the map, you would use picture files. We were utilizing GitHub to keep our version control of our game as we progress through development. And Godot did not have a good. It didn't work very friendly with GitHub. Godot was still in the process of using GitHub as a version control. And usually when working with GitHub, as a developer, you're using readable files like text files, right? You have your Python files, your README, your text files, JavaScript files, whatever it may be. And those are very easy to debug. But because we were doing game dev, some of the files were picture files, right? These spreadsheets, these pictures. And whenever we will upload our sprites, our pictures onto GitHub, and we try to create different branches to work on different parts of the game, we started having merge conflicts, right? For example, I was in charge of creating the main character of this game, whereas two of the other members in our team were in charge of creating the map of the overall game. And what they were doing was they would utilize the hero model I would create. They would put it into their map to test out the map. Because if you know anything about games, you have collisions, right? When you have your character get up to a wall, the character should not move through the wall, right? And you have to set up some kind of collision to keep it where your game is able to know, hey, this is a wall, this is a character, they touch, they should not pass through. So they will utilize the hero model. And what would happen is whenever they would import this hero into their game, and then I made an update to the hero was no longer the same version that they had on their map. And we would get issues. So we would have to go and handle these merge conflicts. And usually with GitHub, a merge conflict isn't that difficult to solve if it's just readable code. But what we were encountering was because it was all images, you would have the raw code of all these pictures, and it was nothing but binary code. It was like numbers and letters, and it took hours and hours of debugging trying to figure out what piece of code was actually the image of the hero. And I would have to manually find this binary file within a bunch of other binary code, delete these specific lines, therefore removing the character from the hero map or for whatever map they're using. That way the map wouldn't be corrupted. And that was just a cool little story about the issues with text files and binary files and different types of files that you might encounter, right? So luckily we're going to be working with nothing but text files. You shouldn't have anything to do with binary files, but just know that there are different types of files out there. Today we're going to talk about how to read these files. There are text files, how to import them into our Python code, and how to utilize them. Right, and there's some very specific syntax we're working with Python. So we'll talk about the syntax, break it down line by line. And if you want to know more about the syntax, you can easily find this in Python read-write files. Python has a documentation for it on how it reads and writes specific files. Right, I'm not just putting this out of like thin air. This is straight out of the documentation. If you would like to learn more about each piece of syntax and how it's used, you can dive more into the documentation. But we've done all that legwork for you, and we got you the main meat and potatoes of how to do that. All right, so you're going to start by opening the file with the correct path and then with a specific declaration, right? And this declaration is going to be some kind of letter that's going to stand for how you want to open this file. These declarations or parameters are R for read, W for write, or A to append, which you can assume what appended means, right? Adding something to a file at the end of it, right? And here's a little code snippet. We have something to simulate what's happening. They create a variable called infile, right? And what this variable is going to do, it's going to hold the content of the file that we're trying to open, right? We're going to open this file with the prefix of open, right? This is a built-in method that Python has that lets you open some specific file. The first argument it takes is going to be the file path of the file that you're trying to open. right? Here in this context, the file is just called name of file.txt, and there is no like forward slashes or anything specifying that's nested within a directory. And that's because more than likely this Python file that has this code and this text file are probably within the same directory, so there's no specific path having to add here. So that's the first argument, the file path. The second argument is how you want to open this file. Do you just want to read it? Do you want to write into this file? Or do you want to add something to the very end of it? And I believe there's some other arguments you can pass in, but the ones that we will be working with are just going to be these three. And to be more specific, honestly, just reading and writing is the biggest one that you want, because that's honestly what you're going to be doing. This code will only read the first line of your file. So let's talk about that. So we open the file here, right, using the open method. And we're specifying that we want to read the contents of the name of file.txt. That saves all the content into this variable called infile. And then what we do is we create another variable, and what we're going to assign to this variable is what comes back from this method, right? Notice that they call the same variable infile, right? This is the same variable that holds the content of the file that we opened up, and they use a read line method. And what this is going to do is going to open it and read the first line of this file, nothing else, right? This method will read the first line. It takes that line that we read and we're saving it to a variable, right? So we had a text file with like 10 different lines. We opened it up, saved it into infile, and then we grabbed the first line using the .readLine method and saved it into this variable called line. What we then did was use a strip method. And the reason for this is because when you save something into a TXT file, a text file, or any kind of text file that you have, the way that your text file identifies a new line is by, you won't visually see it, but if you are familiar with escape characters, there's a backward slash n, which stands for a new line. So there is a space between each line of content. And I'll show you this in real time. They stripped that spacing from the line, named it line stripped, and then they printed it out. So they were able to successfully open up the file, grab the first line, remove any spacing. They printed it out, and then the next step was closing it. Right? They closed the file. It's no longer needed, so they closed it. If you don't close it, what might happen is it might end up staying open, and then other people might have issues trying to open it themselves. If you have this in some kind of shared drive or something like that, right? So you want to make sure that if you open it, you want to close it as well. So that was one way of doing it, right? And then there's a different way of doing it, which is very similar, but this method, what it does is it automatically closes it for you. So both methods will work. One method will give you something. Well, one method will give you the same thing, but one will require you to manually close it, while this method will close it for you. And the way that you do that is by saying with open. And before I continue, let's go ahead and kind of see this in some code so you don't get any more confused than you probably already are. So we're going to be in lesson 10. Oh, I shifted it. My bad. It should not be lesson 10 anymore. It's going to be lesson 11. Lesson 11. Now, what I'm going to create in lesson 11 is going to be a new text file. And I'm going to call this dogs.txt. Right? This is not a Python file. This is not a JavaScript file. This is a raw text file. And you kind of already see, thanks to the extensions that we have, this little paper here signifies that this is a text file. And I'm going to add a couple types of dogs in here. I'm going to take Husky, Chihuahua, Pit Bull, Golden Retriever, and we'll say Labrador. Labrador. I think that's how you spell it. Something like that. All right. I'm creating a text file so I can use for my demo. And now I'm going to create a different file, which is going to be a Python file within the same directory. It's going to be dogs.py. All right, so I have a dogs.txt and a dogs.py, two different types of files. Sure, they might be called the same, but there are different types of files, so it's okay. So using the syntax that we talked about earlier, I'm going to go ahead and create that variable called inline or infile. And this tends to be the standard way that you would call something, like the default way. You can obviously call this something differently, but when you're trying to open up and get something from a file, we call it an in file. When we're trying to put something out into a file, we call it out file. You can obviously call it whatever you want, but this is kind of just like the standard of how we do it to kind of specify the intent of our code. And then we say open. And I'm going to specify the file that I want to open. It's going to be dogs.txt. Following that, I'm going to specify how I want to open it up, right? So notice you can kind of already see here what this open method takes. The first argument is the file, right? So file description or path. The second parameter is a mode, right? Open text mode. And I'm specifying that I want to read it, not write, nothing else. So the mode that I want to open up this file is in the reading mode. And you can see here, there's some other optional arguments that you can open or use, but we're not going to worry about any of these. The only thing that you really need is just these two arguments to, do some basic functionality. Everything else is optional. But this here is going to open up this file. We then create a variable called line, where I'm going to grab the first line of the text that's saved into infile by saying infile.readLine. This will grab the first line saved in infile. And then we're going to do line underscore stripped is equal to line.strip. And we can see how this looks like in a bit, so I can show you what I mean. Then we can print line stripped. And after printing it, I want to close the file. And let's see how this works. I'm going to go into lesson 11. And I'm going to run my Python file, dogs.py. And as you see here, I'm able to print out the first line that was in the txt file, which was Husky. Right, so I successfully opened up the file to read it. I grabbed the first line. I stripped the spacing, and this will come in handy later in a bit once we get more stuff in here, and I'll show you this in real time. But we're able to print out the line Husky, and then we close the file. Do you have any questions on this method before I continue?
I guess why would you want to use it if the other method's available to read every line?
Absolutely, right? That's a good question. I don't know why you would want to use this method. We teach you this, so you know that there's different ways of doing it. But yes, the other method, I feel like it's better. But you're absolutely right. I would assume if you had like multiple things that you had to do to this file, in multiple lines of code, you want to close it immediately, while the other method is like quick, like, hey, I want to open it real quick, grab these things, and then close it back up. Right. So I guess one way is a little bit more, it's faster, whereas this one can be a little bit more deliberate if you have a lot of things, a lot of formatting to do. All right. So no further questions on this? Okay. Well, let's talk about the other method. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna comment this out, so we can still see this and compare it to the other method. Well, instead of saving the contents of this file into a variable, I'm gonna start this by saying with open, right? And notice that it's already a changed color. It's just not a normal variable. And I know that you probably might not recognize it because you don't have my my color formatting of how I have my VS Code. But the way that I've been coding, I know that this is a method, right? This is a reserved keyword, and a function or method is typically highlighted for me in blue. Depending on the format that you might have in your VS Code, yours might have some other kind of color that it defaults to, but mine always tends to default to blue. And I know this is a method, right? The open method is a method that comes by default with Python, right? Think of it similar to when you worked with JavaScript, right? We didn't have to import anything to use the document method, right? By default, JavaScript already had a document method that it utilized to access the DOM, right? Very similar to that. Python already has the open method installed into Python, so we don't have to import anything. It's a pre-built function, very similar to the other functions like len or dot title, right? All these other methods that come with Python. Open is one of those methods that comes with it. So instead of saving it, we're just gonna go ahead and say with open, letting it know like, hey, I'm not saving it. I'm just gonna go ahead and open it real quick. And very similar to how we did the syntax for open, we're gonna specify the file path, and I want to read it. And then right afterwards, you're gonna say, how do you want to open it? I want to open it as in file. So this is saying the exact same thing as this. But the difference is that this allows you to start some kind of a code block to do something the moment that you open this file, right? Whereas here, we had to do multiple lines to handle different things. Right here, using the syntax, the moment we open it, I can kind of give it an alias of how I want to open up this file and how I want to refer to it. I want to refer to the contents of this file as this variable name in file. All right, similar syntax, but a little bit different. It's all on one line. They're going to do the exact same thing, but one lets you kind of open up a code block so you can get straight to the functionality of how this should work. Right, so this starts this code block. We want to ensure we put a colon here, and it will bring us to the next line, indent it. And then what I'm going to say is for line and in file. Right, and as you can already tell, this started a for loop. Right, this is started for loop, and I'm going to grab every single line that's inside of in file. And I want to print line.strip. So what is the syntax saying? Once again, I want to use the function open to open up docs.txt and read from this file. And I want to give it an alias and refer to it as the variable name of in file. It then starts a code block. Within this code block, I initiate a for loop to loop through the contents of this in file. And then I print every single line as I'm looping through the contents of the file. Notice that as I grab every single line, I'm going to go ahead and strip it. And we'll see how that works without the strip method. But let's go ahead and run this. And we see here that I'm able to successfully loop through the entirety of my docs.txt and print out every single line within the text file when I run this Python script. Now, what if I remove the dot strip method? Let's just go ahead and print every line without it. If you see here, there are spaces after every single line. And that's not good, right? This is referring to all this space between every single word. And we have to get rid of it. The dot strip method removes all the extra spacing and formats it in a way that looks nice and pretty. Right, so you have to use the dot strip method if you want to remove all that extra mumbo jumbo. Do I have any questions on the second method or how the dot strip method helps us?
So you said unlike the other method where you have to specify in file.close, the in file.close method, this automatically closes it once all the lines are read.
Correct. After this code block ends, it automatically closes it. That's the difference between this and this.
I might be getting a little bit ahead here, but if you're trying to specify a specific line of code, like line 10, would you put that in the dot read line, open and close parentheses, for it to read just that line?
I'm not quite sure. Let me tell you a scenario of why we do this to begin with. Maybe this will help you. All right. And this is not the only specific scenario, but this is the first one that comes to mind. Let's say you're a freelance developer, right? You get hired by some kind of, let's say, uh, doctor's office, right? Some kind of doctor's office, some medical business hires you like, hey, I need you to help me with my website, right? I want you to build my website. I want to be able to have some kind of database where I can store all the information of um, my clients, right? Who they are, their contact information, what kind of procedures that they're receiving or help they're getting from me, and I want to be able to track this on a website, right? That only I have access to. Up to this point, I've only been doing everything via Excel, right? So what you would do is that you will receive this Excel document, right? And when it comes for you to, you're done with the website, you need to load up all this data. Let's say this client has been, or the client you have has been open for like 20 years. Right? They've been working like the Stone Age for 20 years, and they're finally trying to, use technology, and they have thousands upon thousands of data within this raw file. It might be an Excel file, whatever it may be. Would you want to go through every single item and load it up in this database? No, that's not very ideal. That will take you forever, right? An easy way of doing that is you would receive this file from your client. You would run some kind of script that allows you to open the file, read through every single line, and then upload it into your database. This is a very perfect scenario of how that would work, right? Uh, does that kind of answer your question of like why, like, not necessarily you would want to get just like line 10, but that's more of a realistic and practical way of how it would be done when trying to read through files. All right. And that's not just like as a freelancer, that could be also working in some kind of corporate job, whether they wanted to migrate to something new and you need to upload all the information, whatever it may be. Now, what happens if I try to read a file that's not there? For example, what do we say? Something like this. If we try to read a file that's not there, what I'm pretty sure is going to happen, if I remember correctly, is that you're going to get an error, right? File not found error, right? It's going to give you an issue. So when you try to read through a file that's not there, you'll get an issue. But when you won't get an issue is if you try to write into a file that does not exist, right? Let's say this dogs.txt file does not exist. If I try to read from it, I'm going to get an issue. But if I try to write, if this is a W, what it's going to do is going to create a file, name it dogs.txt, and do stuff for you, right? So you'll probably get an issue if you try to read from something that does not exist. But if you try to write into that does not exist, it will create that file for you. In the event you run into a situation. For example, let's go ahead and try to write into a file for cat list. Let's go ahead and use the same syntax that we've been working with. I'm going to go ahead and comment this out. And then I'm going to create a cat list. This will be, I don't know, cat breeds, Siamese. I'm going to use the slides. Siamese, Manx, Abyssinian, and Savannah. I don't think these are cat breeds. I'm assuming these are names probably. But let's go ahead and say with open. I'm going to open cats.txt. Notice that this does not exist. I don't have no cats.txt. And instead of reading, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to write into this file. All right, so we saw how to read. Well, let's write. And I'm going to say with open, I'm going to open up cats.txt and I'm going to write it. And I'm going to say as out file, right? Now I'm getting information and sending it to a file. Whereas earlier, we were grabbing information that already existed from a file and bringing it in. Right, so we called it in file. Now we're going to call it out file. This actually is not mandatory, right? Naming it in file or out file. You can name it whatever you want. You can name it waffle and it'll still work. But it's more of a semantic thing. You know, it refers to something that we're grabbing from a file. So we'll name it as out file. And then I'm gonna say for cat in cat list. I'm looping through the list that I created earlier. Right. And this code block is not that I'm not forced to just loop through the file that I'm opening. I can do other stuff in here, like looping through a list within my global scope. And then I'm gonna grab the file that I'm trying to write into. And instead of using like we did earlier, like we did reline or loop through and print something out, what I'm gonna say is I'm gonna say dot write. Dot write. This method is going to allow you to write stuff into the file that you are referring to. And what I want to write in here is the cat. And I'm gonna keep it like that for now to see what it looks like. I'm opening up this file called cats.txt. It does not exist, but I'm gonna write into it, so it should create it for me. And I'm gonna refer to it as out file. I then loop through my list of cats, and then I'm gonna write into that file. And then when I run this, it didn't do anything because I wasn't printing anything out. But if we look at my directories here, we see a new file called cats.txt. If I click it, I can see that I now have the strings of Siamese, Max, Abyssinian, and Savannah. But there's something weird here, right? It doesn't look nice and neat how I would like it to look. And that's because when I was writing the content in here, it took it very deliberate. It did not add a space after each of these words, right? Text files are automatically going to write from left to right until the line is complete. So if you want to format this, when you write into the file, you have to specify that after each cat name, you're going to add the new line command, which will start a new line, bring it downwards, and then add the next cat. And when I run this again, we see that Siamese, Max, and Abyssinian, as well as Savannah, are neatly formatted within my text file in their own individual line. Right? So as I'm writing the cats in here, I'm specifying that after I add a cat using the write method, I also want to add a new line afterwards to bring me to the next area. I think if we say /s, no, it won't. Never mind. Let me see if I can find these commands. There's other commands we can use. I'm just more familiar with new line. Well, I do this. Does anybody have any questions on how we achieve this? Nobody has any questions? We're all good?
Yeah, ready to move on, I think.
Okay. Um, Yeah, I think the new line is the only one that I can find. Uh, I don't see anything else. I think we might have something like cat. This might be one where we can separate it.
If you use a text literal, then it'll be real easy to format it.
Like what?
A literal notation, like an F string.
Here, are you referring to?
Yeah,
Yeah,
do an F string and then encapsulate cat with within the brackets, and then you can add just a space after that, and it'll add a space.
true. I was trying to see if there was some kind of escape character I could use. But I guess not. Yeah, it looks like that'd probably be the best method of doing it. Or I think we can do. I think there is this method here. Plus, might have to import OS. If I'm being honest. Yeah. Okay, I do have to import OS. That's one way of doing it, I guess. That's okay. No biggie. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. So we talked about reading the file. Right, we can grab the file, look through the file itself, and then print everything. From there, we're able to grab a file and write into it using the .write method. So everything in the file is a string. So you must convert all integers or floats to strings before writing them into a file, right? Make sure to add a new line character /n to the end of it so each number is on a separate line, right? And that was pretty self-explanatory, right? If I wanted to do something like this, where let's say I have nums.txt, and I wanted to write a bunch of numbers in there, I would say for num in range of, let's say, 11, and I want to start at 1. I'm going to say out file dot write. I'm going to convert the num into a string, and then I'm going to add a new line afterwards. And I see nums.txt was created, and I can open it up, and I was able to write into the file with nothing but numbers. But because these are integers in code, it won't know how to do that. So you have to convert it into a string, because text files are nothing but strings or characters in a sense. Pretty straightforward.
Can you overwrite the text you already made?
Yes. If I run this again, it'll override it. I can say 10, or let's say 11 to 21. And there you go.
So the only way to add on to where it left off is to use append instead of write.
Yes, you want to use append.
Cool.
There are some other methods that you can use to find. I just don't know the top of my head, but you could use append. Let's say, let's go with exactly what you said. We'll go to 1 and 11. Let's run this. And we have 1 through 10. Now let's try to do append. And I'm going to say 11 to 21. And I do it again. And now we see that I added the rest of it at the end of it. All right, let's talk about JSON. You guys should be already somewhat familiar with JSON, working with the first 2 weeks with the front end. JSON standing for JavaScript Object Notation. It's typically just an object, or in Python, it's a dictionary, different key value pairs. JSON, JavaScript in general is very popular. I believe 80% of the websites out there on the internet are written in JavaScript. And the reason why JSON is so popular is because it's very easy to convert it into a different type of language, right? It's easily convertible. This format allows you to exchange data between different computer languages. You will be seeing this for the remainder of the cohort, so make sure you guys are comfortable on navigating through the nested data. And we're going to talk about reading and writing JSON for our example. Now, once again, let's use the cat explanation. We have our cats here. And to use JSON in Python, you have to import the module JSON, right? It doesn't just naturally have it. You have to import it, so you have some methods that can handle JSON. And you're going to be using this method a lot as well once you start working in the backend. So get comfortable with this one. This method is going to give it access to a bunch of different JSON functions, which is going to be dumps and loads. And you can see here JSON dumps is one of them. Let's see where the JSON loads is at. JSON loads. And as you can probably guess from the name of these methods, loading will allow you to load JSON into your Python file, and dumping will you'll essentially dump data from Python into a JavaScript file. So here we have our cat list. Let's move this back to cats.txt. And I'm going to write into that cats file. But this time, instead of just writing raw text, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this JSON module that I imported. And as you saw in the definition, we have a command called dumps. And what I'm going to dump in there is going to be the entirety of cat list. And it takes two arguments. The first one is what you want to dump. And the second one is where you want to dump it to, which is going to be out file. Once again, we imported the JSON module to have access to some of the built-in methods that come with JSON, which is going to allow us to dump into some kind of JSON file. And let me actually update this. This should not be cats.txt. What we want to do now is say cats.json. Takes 1% argument, but why was I getting an error? JSON.dumps. I'm going to dump cat list. Takes 1% argument to give it. Oh, I used dumps. My bad. It's dump. Run again. And there we go. My apologies. Dump is singular, not plural. JSON.dump. Same thing with load. JSON.load. And there we go. I guess dumps is a whole different other method. So JSON.dump is going to allow us to dump information into some other file. What this dump method is going to do is going to take the first argument that we pass in, and it's going to convert it into JSON and add it to the file that we're specifying. And when we open it up, you might not be able to tell much of a difference right now, but we're going to be able to format this in a little bit. But this is in a JSON file. I wonder if I delete this. Yeah, okay.
So if you ran type on that, for instance, would it be something else that we don't see? I guess I'm not sure what you're referring to. Like it appears the same, but it isn't. Like when you go to cats.json, yeah, it looks like a list, but are you saying it may not actually be?
If you run type, well, it will be JSON. Let's see if I can do. I don't know if it's gonna run it. Console.log. No, it's not gonna run it. JSON is different than a JavaScript file. We won't be able to run type on it, but I wonder if I can see. No, it won't let me see it. You'll see it right now once we start working with more nested JSON documentation. You'll see it in a bit, I promise you. Now, because we wrote into it, let's go ahead and try to read now. I'm going to say with open. I want to open up cats.json. And this time, instead of writing, I'm going to read as in file. And I'm going to call this restored list is equal to json.load. But what do I want to load? I want to load up the entirety of in file. And it's print restored list. And it's hard to tell right now because it's just one single list with no different levels of nestedness. But this allows us to grab the information. I'm pretty sure I'll probably get an error here if I try to for a line and in file, print line. Let's go with type. Class string. I wonder why I'm not getting an error. Huh. Am I specifying? Is it because it's dumps? No, I think it's just because they look similar. I think the actual data type is different. Misinterpreting output. JSON formatting for list looks identical to Python list representation. In Python and in JSON look the same. This might give the impression that no conversion has occurred. Yeah, they're different. It's just hard to tell because the fact that they're lists. It'll definitely they'll look different once we get into the nose. But they are different data types. It just they look fairly similar. Let's try an actual assignment like read and write to see if we can see it better. Rewrite. This is student practice, but we'll do this one together to ensure we're good on this. We're going to write a code that opens a file named merit.txt. Let's open up on a README here. And write code that opens a file named merit.txt and writes to that file that the first 4 lines of the nursery rhyme, Mary had a little lamb, with each line being written on a different line of the file. So I don't know the content of the actual song itself. So we'll say song is equal to, and let me do some quick Googling. Mary had a little lamb lyrics. We'll take this. As you can tell, I didn't have a good childhood because I don't know the song. And let's go ahead and paste this in here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, let's see if we can do some formatting here and make these into strings. I'm getting issue here because of the quotation mark. There we go. We have the 4 lines of their nursery rhyme, Mary Had a Little Lamb, which each line being written on a different line of the file. All right, so we have to take this and then add it to each line of a Mary.txt file. So let's try it out. We're going to say with open, and I'm going to get Mary.txt.
So one thing I noticed is you don't have commas in between the strings, or you just mean as one continuous string.
Thank you for that. I missed it. You're absolutely correct. I was going to get an error. So with open Mary.txt, I'm going to write in here as out file. And then I'm going to loop through every single line within the song. So I'm going to say for line and song. And then I'm going to say out file dot write. And I'm going to write the line with the new line character afterwards. And now if we go into our read write directory and run read write, I get an issue because this has to be a plus sign. There we go. Now let's look at it. Mary Had a Little Lamb. Pretty straightforward. Nothing crazy here. I grabbed every single item and I made it into a TXT spot. Now here's the JSON part of it. We're going to create a dictionary that maps the numbers 1 through 13 to the names of so on and so forth. I'm not going to read through them. Write code that writes this dictionary to a JSON file and reads it as well. So we'll say names is equal to, open up this dictionary. I'll say 1. This will be William. 2, Patrick. 3, John. And it's going to take a little bit, so bear with me. Tom. Peter. And Jody. I seem to have missed some. I have Tom, Patrick, John, Tom, Peter. This is Colin. My apologies. Colin. Sylvester. Paul. Chris. David. Matt. Honestly, you should have stopped at 6 or something. Peter again. And then finally Jody. And nobody likes Jody. All right. So here's my dictionary. In case you didn't write them down, I'll send them in the chat. So you have them. But let's go ahead and continue. So here's my dictionary of names, 1 to 13, with their names. And we're going to write into a JSON file. We're going to say with open. I'm going to say names.json. I'm going to write and say as out file. I'm going to say JSON, and I need to import JSON, which I don't have it. So at the very top, I'm going to say import JSON. So I can utilize the dump method. I'm going to say JSON.dump. Well, what do I want to dump? I want to dump names into out file. Run this again. And I have my names.json file. When I open it, it looks like this, which is my JSON. Now, it doesn't look very pretty, and we can fix this. But although it looks like a regular dictionary, this is in a JSON file, right? And this technically is JSON. They just share very similar similarities to Python and JavaScript. Where this will become more apparent is when working with something like Django in your backend and you're trying to receive JSON from your front end into your back end. And then if you try to utilize the data, it'll give you a hard error and tell you, hey, like you cannot parse through JSON. So although it might seem a little misleading right now because we can't really see what type of data type it is, and either or we were still able to load it up without converting it, I want you guys to actually know that this is a different data type. And when you try to use it in something like Django, it's gonna give you an error, right? So just keep that in mind. Now, uh, this doesn't look too pretty, so let's do a little bit of formatting. I believe we can add something like indent is equal to something like 4. I'm pretty sure. Let's do 4 and see how that works. And there we go. We're able to indent it. I don't know if the indent is the correct flag. I think there's another flag. This isn't on the curriculum. But the reason why I show this is because when you get that JSON that looks super nested, as you saw in this example, and you can have like a dictionary that has like key value pairs of lists, and so on and so forth, that the deeper the nested is, you want to be able to display it in your JSON file like this instead of what we saw earlier without the indentions and everything was just in one line. Because even though this might be nested like 6, 8 levels deep, it'll put everything on one single line, which is going to be impossible to read. So it's good to know that you are able to format it with stuff like indent. And I believe the number of the indentions, it refers to how nested you want to go into the indentation. So right now, because I only have, one level of a dictionary of key value pairs, that's it. I can get away with doing like indent 1 or indent 2. And I think indent 1 might not work. I think it starts off at 1 and then it goes to 2. Okay, no, 1 is fine. So it normally does not have any indentions. So because there's only one level deep, indent 1 works. But I'm pretty sure if I had something like, let's say, John, instead of John being a string, it's another dictionary. And this was something like 1 and John. And having indent 1. Maybe not the best example. What do we say? A list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Will this do it? I'm getting some kind of error here.
The commas are messed up between 2 and 3.
1, 2, thank you for that. 3. Let's see if this does it. Okay. I think we can start to see it now. Let me add another indentation to see how much of it changes. And then 3. And there you go. Yeah, so you can see that earlier this was like over here, right? When I had indent 1. Run it again. Right, so it unindents it and it starts looking weird. I'm pretty sure, am I crazy? I'm pretty sure it is indenting it. I don't know. Well, just know that you can indent it, right? You can make it a little bit more formatted. I don't know how much the value of the indent flag might change it, but if you want to get some much prettier JSON, that's the manner that how you would do it. Sound good? All right, that was the first example. I'll let you guys try out the other ones on your own. This should give you enough to kind of get started. So go ahead and
Oh,
try. Yes.
sorry, real quick. When you said write code that writes this dictionary to a JSON file and reads it as well, I mean, are you wanting to read it on the readwrite.py file? Because Right now, we're just writing it to JSON.
That's good. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. With open, I want to get names.json. And before I continue, I saw a message here from Kenny, I think. Kenny, did you say something? Or did you delete it? I think I saw it.
I had said something, but I deleted it.
Okay, okay. We're gonna open this up. We're gonna say read as in file. We're gonna say json.load, and I want to load in file. Printing it out. Do I have to put it in a variable then print it out? Let's go with info is equal to, and then print info. There we go. I wonder if I can do indent in here too. Indent is equal to 2. No, I did not like that. Oh well, it's okay. Anyways, I was able to load the data in, regardless. I think there's something called preprint that we can use to make this better formatted. Python pretty print. So before I go into preprint, we saw here I was able to load up the JSON, right? And it did load it up. It's just not that readable here. It doesn't look too pretty. It's doing it exactly how we had it when we added it to the JSON file with no indentation. And right now it's doable, but once again, when you have like 8 levels of nested data of different types of data types, it can look very ugly, especially if you're trying to read it on your console. So what we can do, and this is out of scope and not part of the curriculum. You actually learn this in the immersive program, but I can just show you here real quickly a small little demo. We can print or import another module called pprint, which stands for pretty print, right? And what this does, it provides you the ability to structure your data to make it more readable. All right, it's another module that you can use. And the way that we're going to do it is once we get this data, we saved it into this variable called info. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say pprint dot pprint and pass it info. And let's see how this works. There you go. Let me clear it up. Awesome. I think we could probably add some other flags here to make this nestedness work here, actually. Yeah, see,
Actually, why is the order kind of jacked
what do you mean?
of the objects? Instead of going like 1 through 13, it's kind of mixed up, the order. When you the pretty print.
I just noticed that myself. Goes 1 and then it goes to. Oh, well, first and foremost, dictionaries are not in order. They're not ordered, right?
Yeah, I understand that. I just still wondered why I was printing it in a different order though, anyway. Because it seemed like everything else was going 1 through 13, but when you use pretty print, it was 1, 10 through 13, and then 2 through 9.
Because dictionaries are not in ordered sequence, you can't always rely on these to be formatted like you would in that order. The 1 through 13 is not hard set. You could order it if you want to, right? You want to get the keys and then kind of format it, order it, or sort them in a sense. But naturally, dictionaries, that's the nature of this data type, is that dictionaries are not a sorted data structure,
If
right?
if if you ran it again, would it mix up the order again just because you say it's not even tracking any kind of order?
Yes, sometimes,
Okay,
not
okay,
not all the
yeah.
times.
Oh,
Not
okay.
all the time. It's very finicky. You can't always expect it. Right now, probably because in this session that I'm running it stuck to this one. But maybe in a different day, if I close this file, open it again, it might give me a different sequence. The way that it's actually showing it to you now is actually a lot deeper than that. It's using its its hash address, I think is the word of saying it. The way that it's formatted in memory is different. So, in a sense, it does have some kind of formatting or shortness, but it's not the conventional means that you would think as normally from the sequence of 1 through 13, right? And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at. It gets more finicky and can than that, but it would be too out of scope to kind of try to explain that. There is some kind of shortness in memory. It's just not from the ascending value of a numerical number, right? If that makes sense. But because of that, you don't have them sorted how you would when you first declare it. It's how it stores it in memory. That's how you're going to receive it back, which can get more complex to explain. I'm sorry if I can't give you the more
No,
actual raw
yeah,
reason of how it does it.
it's all good. It's just with objects, don't expect, a sequential order.
Correct. You cannot
Because
expect them to be like this. And this is not technically not an object. This is a dictionary in Python, right? An object, as we saw, is different. It
yeah,
uses a
yeah,
class,
sorry.
right?
Yeah, I'm just
It's
used to
okay.
I'm used to the different terminology in
I know.
JavaScript.
It's okay. I just want to make sure that we don't get confused using different terminology. But no, it takes time. It's okay. But yeah, so we have that. We are able to do preprint. And as you might have already seen here, and this preprint definition, when it highlights it, I actually do see the indent here on this one. Indent. I think normally by default it's set to 1. I can probably set indent is equal to 3. And notice this, it might change here. And no, it just makes me look dumb. Okay, never mind. It is what it is. Probably we added more values in here.
Yeah, actually, it looked like it moved things a little, printed and it indented more than the previous time.
I
I
think
mean,
if I
indent
do,
1 versus indent 3, it looks like it changed a little bit. Oh wait, okay, maybe not. Hmm,
Well, no, he just ran it again, but it
okay,
it did indent
okay,
the
okay,
entire
okay,
thing.
okay, okay.
But it'd be more helpful if you could choose either the key or the value to indent, but I don't think you can do that.
I think that there has to be a way. I know there is. Indent. Death. I think that's what it was. Indent is what it is. Death. There. I knew there was a way, man. Look at this. Ah okay, whatever. 4. No, it's okay. I know there is a way. It drives me crazy not remembering death with compact. There's gotta be some way. I've seen it, I've done it. I don't know why it's not working for me right now. Making me look like a fool. But it's okay. We'll live. Let's go ahead and continue. But yeah, so you can use preprint if you want to print stuff out in your console. Nothing that you have to memorize how to use. I pulled this up real quickly. I know I knew how to do it. It's just that I have not done it in a while. So as long as you know that you have this accessible to you, there is a module that can do it. You can always resort to this. So more power to y'all. But as you can see, I'm pretty sure as you've noticed already up to this point, there's so many built-in methods, modules, syntax, structures that it is impossible for a normal human being to memorize every single one of these, right? And you're not expected to. The main point here is to be able to expose you to enough to know that there is ways of doing it. Of course, you're going to catch on to the more important things, the fundamentals of things, the syntax things, things that you use more often, you'll get really good at. If I told you to center a div right now, some of you might not be able to remember how to do that right now, and that's okay. But you know there is a way of doing it, exists, how to do it, and if you ever have to go back to do it again, it'll be easy for you to pick up. And preprint is just another tool that you can add to your tool belt that you can always just resort to if you ever encounter a situation that you have to print out some data using Python. Know that you're able to see it in a much easier fashion. So no shame in using these tools. They're here for you. And to be realistic with you, no one ever expects you when you get into your job. No one expects you to know this from memory, right? Nothing that you will do in your job is going to be like, hey, you're a programmer, right? You should know all this stuff. We have standard operating procedures for everything. Documentation in the workforce, and it's a running joke that most people use ChatGPT these days for everything they do. I don't know if you've ever seen them. If you've seen the memes yet, if you started following software development stuff on social media, you've probably seen some of these stuff. It's like me inputting like the most sensitive amount of data into my ChatGPT just to solve a single line of code, or like inputting like work secrets into ChatGPT. But it's a thing and it's okay. Just be careful what your how you use it and whatnot. But the tools are there for you. Utilize them. Whether it's ChatGPT, documentation, your own notes. Once you guys graduate from the cohort, you'll still have access to everything that you've learned here, whether it's FOP or the immersive program. You'll have access to the curriculum that's currently there or any future updates that comes from the curriculum. You can always resort to it. So it's there. Use it. So let's go ahead and move forward. As a matter of fact, time is 6:46. I kind of went overtime a little bit. Let's go ahead and go into our first break. Let's come back at 6:56. All right. So here is my file, some README, and my file. So we talked about how we needed to have a different file that we can read these numbers from. So I'm gonna go ahead and just create that file here. We're not gonna handle the error handling if the file doesn't exist, because obviously the file doesn't exist. And I'm gonna create it. I mean, you definitely can, but it's okay. I'll just call this num.txt, and I'm gonna copy and paste these within the text file. All right. Now let's go ahead and create this function. This function is gonna be called file sum, and it's gonna take in the name of some file. And I'll say file name. Right. And we can say it's going to be a string. And what this should return is return a file, right? It should essentially add the sum into some file called sum.txt. So we'll say with open. But what do I want to open up? I want to open up whatever I pass in as an argument into file name, and I want to write into it. Or actually, I want to read from it, right? Which I will then get access to every single thing within this num.txt. I also want to make sure I have some kind of running variable that I can save my sum at. So I'll say sum is equal to 0. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through every single line through here, grab the number, add it to my sum. So I'll say for num in, I forgot to get this alias, so I'll say as in file. I apologize. So for num in file, I'm going to say sum plus equals num. But we know there's an issue here. Well, because we know that text files are strictly strings, we need to make sure that we also convert them into integers, right? And what's also going to happen is that we might get something like this, where we have a negative. So we want to make sure that we get the absolute value of our items here. Maybe, I think, or should we just add into the negative 12? We'll add for now without the negative. We'll keep it as a negative. We won't make it to a positive. I think we want to take into consideration. So we'll leave it like that for now. And then we should get the sum and add it into a other file that's going to be sum.txt. So we'll call something long and see what kind of output we get.
Why wouldn't you use a float? Why would you use integer if those are a lot of those are decimals?
You are correct. We are going to get some floats, right?
And that's what I was trying for some reason it wasn't working, when I tried to like throw like the float or the int on
Float should work. And I'll see what you're trying to get at right now when I get the issue. But I'm pretty sure I think I know where you're getting at. We'll open a new file called sum.txt. I'm going to write into it as out file. And then I'm just going to say out file.write. and I'm going to add the sum in here. And I don't think I have to convert it into a string. I think it should be fine.
No,
But
you don't. It's just when you write it, you have to convert it to a string. That was the issue.
This right here, it's going to give me error here.
You can, so you can, the creation of float was wrong, it's fine. I was misreading my error message. The issue is when you write it to the file, you have to write your newly converted float to a string. So outfile.write str open parentheses sum close.
Yeah, and this kind of goes back right to where's that read write.py. When we did the range method, I guess it deleted it. Where is it? It's docs.py. Here we go. Right. If we remember the range method, that delete it.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
we didn't grab that from a file. We just included the method, on the dogs.py file. We didn't grab it from anywhere though. I wonder if that was the problem I was having.
let's run this file sum, and I'm gonna say, what's the name of this file? It's called nums.txt. Let's see what we get. Here is our sum.txt, and we get 235. And now I don't know if this is accurate. Let me get my calculator out. We have 23.77 plus 116 plus 94 plus, I can't use negatives on my calculator. It's okay.
You got 235.969.
Yes. Plus 0 plus 14.999. And then subtract 12.8, 235. Yeah, 969. This is correct. This is the correct sum. So I did it here, but I also checked my calculator. This was successful. It grabbed the numbers. We converted it into floats. Since we can't convert a float to an integer because of decimal placement, we have to specify what we have to truncate. But we want, to give an accurate number, so we convert all of them to a float. It prevented us from the issue. We added to sum. Credit goes off to JSON. And then we opened up a new text file called sum.txt. We wrote into it the sum and converted it to a string because it was of integer type. And then we ran the function. Any questions? All right. That concludes file.sum. Next, let's go into nobledata.py. This is going to take us a little bit longer. Let's open it up and see what we have. Here, we're going to need to import JSON because we will be working with a JSON file. We're going to write a class this time, a class named nobledata that reads nobles.json file, right? We have a JSON file here within the directory, and it looks like this. Right, this is a first example of something that's really nested in a lot of data that we have to parse through. Right, this class called nobledata needs to be able to read the JSON file and allow the user to search that data. Your class should have an init method that reads the file and stores it in whatever data member you prefer. So call it whatever you want. Any data member of the nobledata class must be private. Next, create a method named searchNoble, right? Notice the keyword here is method. This is a class method, not a function. It's a method. So this needs to belong to the class, right? Called searchNoble that takes as a parameter a year and a category and returns a sorted list in normal English dictionary order of the surnames for the winners in the category for that year. right? So we should be able to pass in something like economics as well of the year that we're trying to search for. This method should be able to go through the entirety of the noble JSON file and look for the winners and return it to us in a list that's sorted. We see that it can be up to 3 people can share the same price. The year will be a string, not a number, right? And the categories are chemistry, economics, literature, peace, and physics and medicine. And it should look something very similar to this, where we instantiate a noble data object. The moment that we instantiate this noble data object, they should automatically be able to open up the noble.json file, grab the information, and save it into a data member. Then we're able to use the search noble method to grab something specific referring to a date and a category. Are there any questions on this? All right, I'll give you guys 20 minutes to give it a try. Time is 7:19. We'll come back at 7:39. But when you guys come back, go on a break from 7:39 to 7:49. That'll be our final break for the night. And I'll see you guys here at 7:49.
I got a quick question, Roger. Sorry.
Yes.
Unless I just missed it, my Wi-Fi is kind of like spotty right now, so I keep lagging a lot. Do we have to create the noble data class, or is it already created somewhere?
You're going to create it within the nobledata.py.
Okay.
Yeah, so create a class that in the init method, you're going to open up the file and receive the data using the JSON module, and then a method that can parse through that data using a date in a category.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Let's go ahead and come back. I realized I did not pause the video. I do apologize for that. When you guys decided to come back and watch the recording, just be aware there's going to be a 30-minute gap. I can edit it, but editing it takes absolutely forever. For some reason, whenever you edit a video, you try to download it again, it takes like 2 hours, and it's so annoying. But let's go ahead and get started again. We should all be looking at my screen right now. Was everybody able to complete the Noble data assignment?
I couldn't even get past the init method. I couldn't get the pull up.
I was able to get initialized and get the JSON into a dictionary that I can manipulate, but I can't navigate it. I have no idea where to begin.
All right.
Yeah, I'm about the same area as Tim.
Okay. Yeah, that's no problem. Let's go ahead and give it a honest try. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the README here on the right side, like always. And here's my Noble data. Let's go ahead and initialize this method. We're going to create a class called Noble data. I'm going to define the init method here that, as we know, it reads the file and stores it in whatever data memory, but I don't see anything about taking any arguments. So I'm going to leave it empty. Within this init method, I'm going to start my with open. I'm going to open up the nobles.json. And notice that I'm hard coding this here. I'm not going to go ahead and pass in any kind of parameter. You definitely can say something like file name, kind of like how we did before, but it didn't say anything about doing that. So we're putting the direct path to what this class should work to. And I'm going to go ahead and try and read the information as in file. And then I'm going to say something along the lines like data is equal to something as simple as in file. And we can say self._noble data is equal to data. And we'll test it out to see how this works. But it should give me access to the entirety of the content of in file. I'm saving it to data, and then I'm assigning it to a data member. Pretty straightforward here. Jason's like, what? It was that easy? All right. Now let's go ahead and create this method. This method is going to be called search noble in itself, a year, and a category. And here is where it's going to get a little interesting. First and foremost, let's just go ahead and print out our noble data to ensure that we're getting what we should be getting. And I'm going to instantiate this class and then call the search noble method just to see if it's working. And I am missing a year. Let's go ahead and remove these parameters real quick so I don't get an error. And run it again. And I did something wrong here. What can we guess that I did wrong? Not
Is
Tim.
it?
You never loaded it.
I never loaded it, right? This is a JSON file, not a regular text file. So we don't know how to handle it. Notice that when I tried to grab the data and use it, I technically did get the JSON data, but I can't read it. And I need to be able to kind of convert it into a Python format that my code can understand. So I'm going to go ahead and import JSON. And I'm going to say JSON.load, and I'm going to load in file. Now let's try it again. And there we have it. We have the entirety of the JSON file here, and it's a little bit too much. And we can kind of see how preprint can make this work better. Import preprint. We'll say data is equal to preprint data, and see if that changes anything. we're going to indent by 2, and I'll put depth by 2 to see how that looks like. Let's see if I can get it to look prettier. Oh no. Clear, run it. And it definitely does look a lot better. Not exactly how I wanted it because I didn't nest it long enough. Let's see if I do indent 3. I wonder how that would change it. Still not what I wanted to. Maybe it's not going to be the indent. I think it's going to have to be the depth. We'll say 4 for depth. And there we go. Now we actually see how this is working. It's pretty nice, right? Having p-print. So p-print does work. That it's a depth. I knew one of these worked, man. It was driving me crazy earlier. But depth is what is going to allow us to see it visually how we want it here. Not a big thing, right? This doesn't really do anything for us besides giving us a visual representation in our console, but that's okay. Let's go ahead. I'll make this to depth 6. And it's working, but it's okay. No biggie. I don't need this. I just need to know that it was loading it successfully. What I can do is just honestly just look at the actual JSON file and see how this works. Well, my search noble method is supposed to be taking in a year and a category, right? So this method needs to be able to parse through the entirety of self noble data, right? The entire data actually, because this is what's holding all my JSON. I need to be able to go into this and find what I'm looking for, right? Let's expand this a little bit and see what it looks like. It looks like there is one key of price, this, that holds pretty much everything. And we can see how, like, as we scroll down, it's the same thing. The first key is prices, so I know I have to get into here. The first thing I have to do is probably go into prices, and I'll just start the nest here. I don't need to get anything besides this list. And now this, instead of returning to me this object with key and a value, it's only going to return to me the value of what prices is, which will be the list, right? So once again, when I run this, what this should return to me is not the entirety of this object, but just this, a list. Well, let's look at the list. How is it going? Well, this list has objects from what it seems like. And the first object is Loretz, which I'm not quite sure what it stands for, but it seems like, oh, my apologies, right here. This first key value pair is this, and then it goes to the next one, and then the next one. So it's a list of objects. And each one of these objects has different key value pairs of year, category, and Loretz. You see that this first object is of year 2022, and so is the next one. And it looks like we have multiple years, but each one of these objects is a little bit different than the other. One is chemistry, the other one's economics, next one's literature, then peace, physics, medicine, and finally chemistry and economics. Well, we have a bunch of them. Oh, point is we have a bunch of them, right? And they seem to be formatted per year. Each year has all the categories, and each one of these has a list, which is Loretz. And what I can only assume, it seems to be who got awarded the Nobel Prize for each category. So I need to be able to go into this data, start some kind of for loop to be able to get every single object within this list. And as I'm going through this for loop, I want to access the key value pairs of these objects and look for the year that I'm trying to find. Once I find the year, then I know that's the specific object I'm trying to grab, right? I'm going to look for the year. Once I have the year, I'm going to use this object that I grabbed and look for the specific category that I'm looking for. Whether it's chemistry, economics, literature, so on and so forth. And once I have the category, I want to be able to grab the value that comes from Loretz to grab the 3 or however many awardees we had. So let's start doing that. We'll say for award in self._noble data. That'll start a for loop grabbing me each one of these objects. And as I loop through each one of them, I'm going to check the year. If award bracket year is equal to the year that's being passed in here as a parameter, then I have the correct one I'm looking for. So I grabbed the year, but after I grab the year, I also have to check if it matches my category. If award category is equal to category, then we have exactly what we're looking for. Because notice we have multiple categories for the same year. We have chemistry for 2022, economics for 2022, literature for 2022. So we don't just have to check for the year, but after we find a specific year, we have to make sure that we find the category we're looking for. And then once we have the category, we now have the awardees, right? We know which object we need to be looking into. So once we've encountered the year we want, we match the category to that year. Then we want to grab all awardees is equal to award Loretz. Something like this. And I think I'm doing this right. I think I'm grabbing award as a whole object. Yeah, I think I'm good. This will give me this list of all the different categories of awardees. So this should return a list of different objects. One object will be Caroline, the other one will be Morden, and the other one will be Barry, and so on and so forth. And once I have these, I gotta start formatting them, right? I need to grab what? I need to make a sorted list that has the surnames for the winners in that category for that year. So let's create an empty list. We'll say awardees is equal to a list. And I'm going to append award, or actually we have it assigned to all awardees. And here's my next issue. These awardees are in a list. So I have to start another for loop in here. So I can grab each one of these objects and then I can grab the name. So I'll say for awardee in all awardees. I want to append awardee surname. Finally, I want to return the list of awardees. I got some spelling here, no biggie. And let's give it a try real quick. We'll try the first one. I'm going to look for 2022. And how does this have to be? I know this has to be a string. And this has to be a string. And this is going to return a list. And I think this has to go here. There we go. So you can, just like we're able to add like type hints right here to specify what type of data type we have, we can also do something like this to explain what it's supposed to return. And this is supposed to return a list. This is not mandatory. This is just so you can help other developers know what your functions and methods are doing. we can specify what's supposed to come out as an outcome. This is supposed to take 2022, and category is going to be chemistry. And let's see how this works. And I did not print. We get Bortosi, which is correct, Meldal, and Sharpless. And we're about 99% of the way there. We're missing what? Technically, this one's correct, but what are we missing?
It's not sorted.
It's not sorted, right? So let's grab one that is definitely is not sorted that we can kind of use an example. This one starts with an E. The next one is a B. Oh, this is just literature. That's only one person. Let's see if we can find one that's not sorted. Aspect, Zlinger. No. This is not sorted, right? No, LMNOP. It is. My bad. C and A. There we go. This was a good one. Card, Angress, and Imbits. The C does not come before the A. So let's try grab 2021 and economics. And we see here, this is not sorted. So we need to sort it. And what we can do is say awardees dot sorts. And there we go. So we return it, we get a sorted version of our awardees. And that concludes the Noble data assignment. Do I have any questions?
On mine, I'm pretty sure I typed everything out pretty much exactly the same as yours as you were going along. But mine is saying that I have a type error on, I think for you, it's line 14 for you. I have the year and it's saying that's an issue.
How are you passing in the year? Is it a string?
The year passed in the search enable function or the year passed in as a key.
I'll have to see it. You want to share your screen?
Yes. Hopefully this doesn't ruin my laptop because it has been bugging out.
Fingers crossed. While he does this, I do want to point out, reading and writing files is going to be a part of your assessment as well. So when working in OOP in the immersive program, this is going to be part of the assessment that you're going to have to go through some kind of file and get a bunch of data.
Are you talking about the object-oriented one or a later one after that?
The object-oriented one.
Oh, man.
Why so
Are you able to
sad?
see my screen?
Yes, I can. Okay, so string indices must be integers, not string.
Or do I have to clarify that it's supposed to be a string first?
No, you don't have to specify. What is going on? JSON.load. I want you to comment out line 15 to 21. And I want you to print out. Did you print out self._data to see what it was?
Like up here. I think I deleted it. Let me do that.
Let's before we try to do this, let's make sure it's actually grabbing the data. So kind of comment this out, yep, and then remove these so you don't get an error when you run this. Or I mean, you can keep it, you're not utilizing it anyways. But just here after line 14 or anywhere there, I want you to print out self dot underscore data. We want to make sure that the issue isn't the data that you're trying to access. Okay, so that's good. All right, so you can clear that. So for sure we know the data is good. And then you can uncomment out line 16 and 20. You are looping through self dot underscore data and saying if award. Okay, I see what you're doing. You're trying to access a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
As if you're saying that one of the keys in award, which is you're looping through this, but what is self dot underscore data right now?
Just that big this thing. The
What did
big
I? You're missing something here that I had and you didn't.
Oh yeah, I
oh, I
see.
was wondering about that. I wasn't was it you had prizes?
Correct. You only have one key value pair. The top level is one key, which is prizes, and then the value is a list, right? So when you try to do award year, it's checking the top level to see where the key's at, but there's no award key. There's no year key, my apologies. The only key is here is prizes. So you need to nest yourself into the list by doing this,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So this won't return prizes. This is only going to return the list of objects. And now it should work. Try it out.
Okay. Right.
You want
Yeah,
to
not
print this out. And also you want to make sure that you return awardees.
mm,
Return and sort.
Make sure that you return this outside of the for
And
loop
yeah. Hmm.
because you're going to be missing some awardees. Yeah, when you return in the for loop, it's going to add one person and it's going to return it immediately. But you don't want to do that. You want to make sure the for loop runs completely.
oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
You also want to print it out here. So this is going to return it to this, but we're not printing it out anywhere. We want to make sure that we print out the result of it.
Oh,
Want to put it right here.
yes, one sec. Oh, my computer's slow.
It's okay.
Like right there.
No, so right now you're calling the class and the method search noble, right? Which is fine. This is gonna return to you this, but it's not being saved anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not saving it to a variable. So either one, you can save it to a variable and then print that variable out, or you can wrap all this in a print statement. So you print what returns from it.
Oh, okay.
And then remove line 29. Run this and you should be good to go. Okay, you're getting none. What's happening here? Somehow this is returning none, somewhere around here. What if I want you to save this to a variable, awardees is equal awardees.sort, and then return that. Maybe it's not liking the fact that you're returning this while you're sorting it.
It might be a small point, but I thought I noticed he was trying to open the file like with the open command like right after after he imported the module. I don't know if that means anything.
What do you mean?
Scroll the top of the code, please. So he has lines 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Is that
I think
causing a
originally
problem?
I had put it up here and then I put it down here and I forgot to put that out. Thank you. Oh, it's
Chase, This
Yes.
is not going to do what you think it's going to do, right? When you run this method, it's going to run this line. It's going to create that list, right? And then it's going to try to sort the list, but it's empty. There's nothing in here.
Yeah, I just realized that. Okay, so put
And
this underneath and above the return.
yeah, correct. You want to put it between here and here. So there you go. Perfect. That way, once there's already stuff in there, then you sort it, and then you return that.
You could
And
also just return the sorted list, couldn't you? And it'll just it'll create a new sorted list for the return.
it's not that doesn't seem to be the issue because this is not working. This is returning none, which is not correct. Right? There's something around here that it does not track. This should not be none. At a bare minimum, this should be an empty list, right? Because he's returning either award winner or awardees, whichever one he was returning, it doesn't matter. It would return a list empty. But right now, it's not returning anything. If award category is equal to category, which you have good, economics, all awardees is equal to award laureates.
Does this have to? No, because it's this for loop is iterating through all of the laureates, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Why is this returning none? Does anybody see something I'm not seeing? Why would you not? What is awardee? Hmm. I want you to print out
The year is wrong.
awarding.
The year in the print statement on line 30, print 2021 economics.
Oh,
Oh yeah, 2001. Of course, it's not finding anything.
yeah.
So 2021?
No, I mean he's
Try,
right.
try.
He's looking for year 2001.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
have.
the answer we did was 2021 to get the answer we got.
Yeah, but
Let's
there is a
try.
2001 and there is economics,
I'll
right?
just try this one, I guess.
Yeah, because there is a 2001 in economics. This one right here. So that's not really the issue here.
It's almost like we're just playing Where's the Difference because it's like code looks like mine. I don't understand what's going on.
What if you indent the awardee winner equals awardees dot sort and return award, push it in a little bit further instead of all the way out?
Like,
Indent it to indent them both.
I run it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so. I want you to print this out right here. I want you to print out awardee after line 19. We're gonna have to check it line by line. Where is the issue? Print awardee. Are you even getting this far? Run it.
Okay.
No, we're not even getting that far, right? So it never even gets here to print out awardee because somewhere around here is probably having an issue. So let's go ahead and I want you to do. Um,
Should I just put a print statement under like every line? Is that too much or?
you can put a print statement after line 15, right? So after line 15, print out award.
Right, so I got that.
Okay. So let's look at this data. It starts a for loop, and it took a couple of them, right? Check 22. What else did it check? How far into this are you? It stops somewhere. But
So do
notice
like the
that
pretty print so we can read it a little bit better.
you could, but it's stopping this for loop somewhere. Either it's stopping or it is not looping through all the data because we're getting some partial information here, right? And that's essentially the issue here is that we're not getting what we should be getting.
I mean, I can go through this line by line later so we can save class on time. Because
Year, do you see anything else besides the year 2022? It gets to the first one and then stops.
it's all the only year I see.
Yeah, and that's an issue. There's nothing else being printed out after year 2022. Once again, can you print out? Why would it do that? For reward in self dot underscore data. Print out self dot underscore data between line 14 and 15. It's all in here,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it prints out the first one, and then when we get here, it loses it. It prints out the first one we get, and somewhere around here it's stopping. If award is equal to year.
Is it because like the year that we're passing in? So if it's going through the award data, in the first year, 2022 doesn't match the given year, 2021.
No, if it doesn't pass this, right? If it fails this check, the if check on line 17, isn't it go to the next one, and then the next one, and the next one,
Oh yeah.
right? Over and over again until it gets to the entire list. It won't do anything else, but because we're printing this out, right? They should be printing out every single one that comes afterwards, but it's not doing that. The moment it gets to the first one, it'll print the first one out, and then we check if the award year is equal to year. So it's not understanding. There's something wrong. What if we do this? After line 17, I want you to print out awardee. No, print out award. Run it again. What should happen is it's going to print out everything that has 2001, but it's not doing that. Yeah, there's an issue here. This is where the issue lies. Why are you not doing that? Right in the search noble 2001 economics. I'm lost. I don't know. I don't know what it could be doing. The only thing I can think of is maybe like restart this method.
Yeah, that's
There's
like
got
I think what was probably what I was gonna do because there must be something small.
Scroll up. I just want to make sure there's nothing else that's impeding this. Class noble data. The init method is fine. I don't see anything wrong with it. We opened it normally, right? As in file, we loaded it up, saved it to a data member. The search noble takes self, year, and category. There's something wrong here. Man, it could be something like really stupid, honestly, like a small space somewhere or something dumb. The only thing I can think of is I would just delete all that and then retype it in. There's some kind of
Okay.
syntax issue happening here.
Okay. Yeah, I can do it
And
another
it
time.
sounds like dumb, but I've done that where literally like there's something wrong somewhere. I could not visually see it. I deleted it, retyped it, and it worked verbatim. And I don't know why it worked. Try it out.
Okay.
That's the only thing I can think of, man. I don't know what
Yeah, I
else
can
could
do it
be
on my
going
own
on
time.
here. We can do it after recording too. But besides Chase, does anybody else have any other question?
Do you have an area? Do you have somewhere we could get just random JSONs with large complex data sets like this to practice? Because I suck at navigating dictionaries.
I knew that question was going to come. I absolutely knew it because everybody asks the same question every single class. In every single class, um, there is. Um, we can do some quick research. I don't know anything from the top of my head. CSV file demos. Right, so sample CSV files to download. So this will give you, you don't know what CSV is until the next assignment is, but these are raw data files that you can use. E-commerce, geographic. We can look at JSON file demos as well. And you'll see stuff like this that you can typically download depending on the website. Here, see, download example 1, example 2. And there should be more complex ones if you want to look around. Dummy data here. Oh, this is a really good one. Minified, invalid. But you can find these. There used to be one, I believe it was it Yahoo? Yahoo can you could typically sometimes you're able to download before the data that they would have in the stock market to download all this in some kind of file. I don't know if they've changed it recently. The last time I tried doing this, I couldn't find the download button, but there used to be a button here that would like download um the data. But there is websites out there that typically offer this, or you can find dummy data. Off the top of my head, a very specific website, I can't think of one. Historical data.
How do you convert comma separated to JSON?
Oh, here's one. Historical data you can download. Oh, now they're charging you. Whack. They didn't charge you before. That was actually the next assignment. If nobody has any other questions, we can continue that one if you'd like to see. Are we good to continue, or does anybody have anything about the assignment? Like Jason wants to say something.
I was gonna say something stupid, but yeah, just because I guess we need to move on.
All right. All right. So next is gonna be the SAT data.py. Let's go ahead and open this up. I could have remembered there was a PowerPoint for it. I'm surprised there isn't. Let's look at the assignment real quick. SAT data. This is a much harder one, but essentially, you're gonna have something like this. This is what's known as a CSV, which stands for comma separated value, right? Comma separated values are exactly what they sound like. It's data that's separated by commas, right? The first line typically is what we call like the header, right? You see here, line 1 is a DBN, which is some kind of number like social number. We have school name, number of test takers, and then we have some categories: critical reading mean, mathematics mean, and writing mean, right? From this, you can kind of already infer that this is some kind of large file that has the data for all these different colleges. I'm sorry, not colleges, high schools, or just schools in general, and it has the mean of their scores for critical reading, mathematics, writing, right? As well as number of test takers. Let's look at the README. There's a much better version of this. I wonder if it's on the curriculum page. Lesson 11. Read write. No, it's not read write. It's SAT data. Here we go. This is how it looks like as an actual file, right? This was created in Excel, right? This is some kind of Excel spreadsheet. When you download a file into a raw file from Excel, it downloads it as a CSV. You can download it as a CSV, and your different cell blocks will end up being just like this. The first row is a DBN, which I don't recall exactly what it stands for. Then we have school names, as you see here, the large variety of school names, and number of test takers, as well as the mean or average of the scores that we got from these tests. And what your goal is as such. You're going to import the JSON module, just like we did before, and you're going to write a class named SAT data, right? And you're going to read SAT.json, which is literally everything that you saw there in the CSV, but in a JSON format, right? This is the raw JSON data of what you just saw. This is what it looks like. I see Jason here wiping the sweat off his head, like, oh Lord. But this is the raw data before it was converted into a CSV, right? I'm not gonna even explain this. I want you guys to parse through it and use this as an example, right? You're going to read that file, that JSON file. Chase, you are not muted, by the way. I can hear Michael.
Oh, my bad.
It's okay. Thank you. And you're going to write the data to a text file in a CSV format, right? CSV, it gives you information here, is just comma separated columns, right? And new lines, which you already know how to do, separating the rows. See note below about commas that are part of the field names, and we'll see that in a bit. You'll see an example of the CSV format below, right? You have the example here. This is what it should look like. We saw how it looks like in raw data as well. This is supposed to be the outcome, something similar to this, right? You need to be able to create an init method in this class that's going to read the file, the JSON file, right? This. And then when you read it, you're going to store whatever data members you prefer. Any data members of the SAT data class must be private. And then finally, once again, a method named save as CSV that takes as a parameter a list of DBNs. This is what it stands for, district bureau numbers, and saves a CSV file that looks like the SAT College Board 2010 results.csv file, right? That looks like this. in the raw format, but with only the rows that correspond to the DBNs in the list that were passed in as a parameter. You may assume that all DBNs in the list passed to your method are present in the JSON file. The rows in the CSV file must be sorted in ascending order by DBN. Now let's look at a quick little example of how that's going to look like. You should be able to create the class and instantiate an object. You're going to have a list of some DBNs. You can use this as an example, right? Your save as CSV method should be able to take this list, be able to parse through the file, and grab only the data that corresponds to these specific DBNs or any other DBN you want, and have it match something that looks very similar to this. Right? So your method should be able to create a new file, a CSV file, right? It's a text file, right? It's just called .csv, right? It is essentially just a text file, but make sure you add the suffix of .csv. You're going to create your first row that's going to have these columns. And then everything afterwards should be the data corresponding to the list of DBNs you gave. Do I have any questions? You wanted more practice, Tim? You got more practice.
Indeed.
Is it taking the M into account?
What M?
When you look at the data, the DBN, how it has 0, 1, and then a letter, does that letter mean anything?
Yes, it
As far as
does.
sorting?
Yes, it does.
They're sorting alphabetically too.
Not alphabetically. I think all these have an M. Oh, there we go. We have X's now. K's,
Jesus.
Q's.
I was already shaky.
If you can do this assignment, you will be solid for the assessment. I promise you. When it comes to reading and writing files, I'm gonna leave you with this. We do not have enough time for me to give you enough time to work on this and then do a walkthrough. Unfortunately, I did not get as far as I would like. I wanted to get through all of today's lesson and then be able to work on the installation for the Pygame. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a pause here. I'm gonna let you work on this either tonight on your own, tomorrow before class, and if it seems like we need more time, we will take a little bit of time. But I want to make sure that we have the installation today figured out before we continue. I think we could definitely knock that out within 40 minutes or 20 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording right now.